I adored my stepfather until his passing revealed a betrayal.
Did he come back as a ghost and confess his sins?
Growing up, I, female 28, had a great relationship with my dad. He was my stepfather, but our family was blended well in that aspect, where we did not use the term step, and there was no contention over that. By the way, this comes from user Polite Pumpkin on the r/OK Storytime subreddit. So, there were other issues that nobody knew about at the time, though. That's not really relevant to this story. My second earliest memory is my parents sitting me down and telling me that I could call my father dad if I wanted to. From that day on, he was my dad. We did everything together. There was a 5-year age gap between my brother and I, so while he was going through his teen years, I was still young enough to want to do everything with my parents. My mom, while not a bad parent, was kind of an absentee. It wasn't that she wasn't around, but she always had to be doing something. She never wanted to sit at home, but my dad was more than content to let me tag along wherever he was going.
Kind of like Elon Musk and his little kid X. Just like brings him to everywhere.
We went everywhere together for the most part. His friends all knew me, and I'd regularly attend dinner parties and the like with them, as I wasn't old enough to be home alone. And even if I was, I wouldn't want to stay home with my brother for good reason. All this to say that growing up, I was closer to my dad than my mom. He was my hero. I looked up to him, and I wanted to be just like him when I grew up. I thought that man walked on water. He and my mom had what I thought was a fairy tale relationship. They were what I wanted in the future with my partner. They never argued. The one time that they did argue was such a surprise that we were worried our parents would get divorced because it never happened. I guess that was the first time he showed that he could be sneaky and lie so easily. Does it count as lying if you just don't argue in front of the children? I don't know. That sounds like what OP is implying. Though chronologically, the reason I can't forgive my stepfather actually happened before this. This is just how things played out from my perspective. Anyway, he sent us to visit my grandparents across the country for the entire summer. He'd originally planned to come with us, but then couldn't get off work. At least that's what he claimed. When we got back, things seemed fine until we went to a family gathering and someone made a comment about my dad's cancer treatment. Cancer we had no idea about. He sent us away without telling us his diagnosis while he got treatment and suffered alone. My mom was pissed, and now, as a married woman, I would be shattered if my husband didn't feel like he could turn to me for support in a situation like that. Things continued on from that after the anger cooled down, and we continued life as normal. I wasn't a perfect child, and my dad and I fought. I'm not saying that there were never any situations where we were angry at each other, but he was always there when I needed him. When I got pregnant as a teenager, he was so angry at me, but he was there to hold my hand in the delivery room. He hated that I got married right out of high school, but he was there to walk me down the aisle.
Sounds like he's like a pretty good guy. Like, yes, I understand not sharing a cancer prognosis, especially to your wife, is not like a good thing to do. It's not good for like your communication, your relationship, but I feel like it's born out of a desire to like not infect the family and his partner with the heaviness of that diagnosis.
It's not like I'm going to get him. I'm going to pull the coolest prank ever on these guys. It's like, nah, it's real complicated when you get a diagnosis that serious. He hated that I moved 8 hours away by car, but he was there for my daughter's second birthday. That was when he confided to my mom that he was wrong because he realized when he visited how happy my little family was. He hated that I ended up moving overseas, but he was there to FaceTime me almost every night. He got sick not long before my daughter was born. We all knew about it from the beginning this time, though there was no way for him to hide it this time, even if he wanted to. I was there in the car with him when he suddenly started getting horrible back pain that wouldn't go away. He ended up having my mom take him to the hospital after she got off work, and he was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that was attacking his kidneys. I can't remember the exact name right now, but he was on chemo for the last few years of his life. He never showed how bad it was and always took longer to accept doctor's orders when it came to mobility aids. In the end, he was using a cane, even though the doctor told him he really needed a walker. He was a stubborn man like that. I was the last person to talk to him before he passed. I regret how that conversation went so much now, not because we argued or ended the call on bad terms, but because it was mostly like every call we ever had. He was so tired, he was falling asleep on the phone. Even now, when my view of him has changed, I still wish I had stayed on the phone longer with him. Instead, I told him it was okay if he wanted to go to bed. I told him he could just call us later. The next morning, I got a call from his phone, and it was really early in the morning back home at 3 or 4 in the morning. I just assumed he woke up early since he went to bed early, but instead it was my mother calling to give me the news that he had passed in his sleep. That I have to reckon with.
I'm so confused why she's so mad at him. So far, I don't see it. I'm like still a little confused.
Something happens, something comes to light that she realizes that all of his past actions were some kind of lie. That's my bet.
Because so far right now, without the context of whatever she's about to bring up, like I'm like, oh, like this is like guy that's trying his best, not someone who's trying to screw people over.
My husband and I made arrangements to travel back home for the funeral and to be there with my mom. It was after the funeral that she told me something that changed my view of my dad. She went to get things figured out with the mortgage company. It's important to note that while the home had been in my dad's family for generations, he and my mom bought it when they were already married. So the mortgage was taken out after they were married. When she went to get the paperwork, she figured out that they told her that she wasn't on the mortgage. She didn't think that could be right because while she didn't actually go to the meetings to purchase the house, she signed all the paperwork my dad brought home to put her name on the mortgage deed.
Secret family. Secret family.
What he really had her sign was forms forfeiting her rights to any claims on the house.
Always read the contract, or at the very least, put it into ChatGPT and say, you're a lawyer, chat. What should I be aware of?
So she had no legal right to the home at all. My brother refused to do anything to help with the situation. He couldn't accept the house as legal next of kin because he would lose his benefits, so instead he refused to help or sign anything at all. Since my mom signed that paper, she wasn't even entitled to half the house like she would have been under the state inheritance laws. I can understand why he did it at the time, but he was so sneaky about it, and I think that was so wrong. At the time, he was the only one working. He'd lost a lot in the divorce he had with my brother's biological mom, and he was afraid of losing the house if anything happened between him and my mom. What I cannot forgive is that he knew he was passing. He knew for years that he wouldn't get better, but didn't try to fix what he had done. He could have come clean and admitted to what he'd done, but instead he just did nothing. My childhood home was foreclosed on because my brother refused to do anything about it, and my mom had no access to any of the information, and she didn't have the money to buy it outright. Wow. I can definitely understand this completely changing your opinion of somebody.
So really quick, OP's stepdad took out OP's mom sneakily because
he was paranoid that it was like they would get divorced and then it would be a bad one and she'd take the house.
He was preempting.
Or they were having like a fight or something. Like, I don't know.
Surprising that after that blew over, that he didn't go and change that. Maybe he was worried that she would catch it, you know?
I don't know. Maybe he thought the brother would take care of it or his son, but the son did absolutely nothing. I mean, I guess once you do that, now you're living the lie. And now you can't just be like, hey, I'm just going to undo this. Hey, can you sign this document again?
It's not the worst thing that we've ever seen happen, but it's also not great. And I can see how seeing this action would color every other small slight, being like, what else is he hiding? You know, because this almost seems out of character based on everything that we've heard about this guy.
I feel like the way I saw my dad has changed now. While I still love him, my view of him has been tarnished a bit. The more I look at the past, the more moments I realize that he wasn't really the man I thought he was. I'll never get that back, and it devastates me. And there's an edit. I fixed a couple errors in the post, and I want to clarify a few things. My dad was not in hospice, and he was not in the hospital when he passed. He had an autoimmune disease that was being treated with chemo, but he did not have cancer. While my mom was absent a lot of my childhood, that was not really anything against her. I had the option of going with her to her friend's house or to visit my aunt or wherever she was going, but I didn't want to. It was boring, and I would have rather eaten fancy cheeses at my dad's friends' houses than watching my mom play cards. It helped that there were usually other kids at the places my dad was going, and if not, I liked his friends, and if I'm 100% honest, he was just my favorite parent. My mom was there for my dad while he was sick, though he did not need her to be his caretaker. He actually told me she wouldn't stop hovering. He liked his independence, and he never actually lost that, though my mom was a bit more of a mother hen. He could drive and walk with the assistance of a cane until the end of his life. I really don't like the comments bashing my mom. I agree she was stupid for signing those things without reading them, and there was more she could have done, but she was a good mom, and she was probably just trusting her husband, which, by the way, I trust that all of you will tune in every weekday at 3 p.m. PST to catch our live stream on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch. Just tap on our profile and you're in. We might even be live right now. So before we finish this story, because there's a little bit story left, I think we collect our thoughts a little bit on this mysterious situation. Why did he not put the house back in his wife's name?
I think like what you said earlier about the brother maybe taking care of it. Maybe he thought it would be fine. Maybe it was like he did it once out of fear and didn't want to get caught in the lie. Though, like, the examples OP brought up don't feel the same as what he did here. My read on this is like, if there's not other examples, this feels like one bad, scared decision rather than a fully emblematic action that shows his character. But I would love to hear what the end of this story.
Let's get into this. I didn't mean to imply that my mom was never there to parent me or involved in my life. I just meant that if we had nothing going on, she was not going to be sitting in the house watching TV. She did take us to do plenty. There were things she did with us that my dad didn't, like taking us swimming every summer. Dad couldn't swim and rarely ever got into the water. And riding all the roller coasters with us at the amusement park. She would take us to visit cousins and aunts and uncles on her side. She just never liked being stuck in the house without any interaction with other adults. And that is the end. Just a little add-on there about mom's tendencies.
OP's stepdad brought papers to OP's mom, with mom thinking they were mortgage papers, but they were papers to forfeit any right to the house. Is that not illegal?
Probably, yeah. It probably is illegal. But at the same time, if you sign a document that you had the ability to read and it just didn't read it, I don't know if that's like a loophole or what, but it is crazy. This is just one of those things. I mean, sometimes one action can undo like a lifetime of good actions, because now this one thing is going to be at the forefront of OP's mind.
And especially, you know, it's like, I think diving into that, one action won't define you if you try to make that right.
But again, it's at that point, you know, maybe his head's not clear enough to remember. Chemo's a nasty cocktail of stuff, man. Chemo really messes you up.